I'm Mark Baer. You're watching the YourTown television program. I'm with Lucas Blok, artist.
Ooh, I like the definition.
Yeah.
It's always other people that get to call you that.
So before we talk about me, let's talk about you. And then we can talk about
Okay. What do you think about me?
Yeah.
What can I say? Here I am.
Here you are.
Mm-hmm.
So I would, for people who don't know your work, you're a colorist.
Yeah.
You've lived here for many years.
Yeah.
Your wife is a musician.
Yeah.
And the being here in Carmel has, since you do deal with color, has made your palette particularly.
It's a good time of year for it.
Yeah, so
spring.
You know, we were having this conversation off screen. Where you live does change your palette.
Well, I haven't lived anywhere else for long, but I did do work in England for a while that was very gray.
Yeah.
But my palette was still pretty loud.
Yeah.
Still bright.
Well, how could you help yourself? Anyway, before we, so that we're not talking abstractly, let's look at some of your work, and then we can talk. They'll understand what we're talking about.
Yeah, good.
Alex,
let's look at one.
Let's look at some of that work. There we go.
Yeah, that's a nice piece. I like that one.
Okay, that's a Lucas Blok.
Yeah. This is pretty recent, a couple of years ago, I think. Actually, this has a great story. This is a redo of a painting that I did that went to New York, and the people who were moving the painting decided to lift it up 8 stories of building without protecting it. So the wind caught hold of it and destroyed the painting, of course. It was an 11-foot painting. So I decided to redo it, and because I really enjoy the whole way the colors start to develop. You can see the thing radiates, and there's ways of your eye kind of delving into it or discovering it. So, I mean, my work is basically just dealing with the aspect of becoming aware of one's experience, one's position in time and place. I'm not necessarily a follower of any Eastern philosophical aspect, but I think a lot of people aren't really paying much attention to their actual process. And visually, I'm using that form as a way to remind people that they're generating and creating their own experience.
Second piece, please. Wow.
Yeah, now this you can really see how the colors start to develop. I mean, I tried to set up the colors in a way that secondary and third level color experiences start to happen. So the viewer starts to see things appearing and disappearing that weren't painted. They're actually things that they're generating through the process of seeing. And, I try and do that in a way that becomes much like, the series of sounds and tones that would be in music that all of a sudden in a certain sequence becomes melodic.
Let's talk about Bach.
Yeah. Why? With Bach?
Yeah.
That's very retro.
Yeah.
But, as we were talking earlier, you said, I've stuck to this sort of minimalist form for quite a while, and I still haven't run out of that. I think there's a whole aspect of introspection and process that goes on in what I do that I haven't run out of what happens in that process.
So just, I find this so interesting because you've chosen an arena as a colorist. Mm-hmm. You've fenced parameters around what you do, and within those parameters, you've found endless, limitless ways to create the new. And again, an artist, at the end of the day, you're trying to satisfy, somebody. You want people to like your work, but you've got to love your work.
Well, there's a whole dance that goes on. Like you mentioned earlier, as a painter, I live in my studio a lot. I mean, I'm alone with canvas, paint, stuff. But the biggest thing I'm with is my own experience of seeing. There's a dance that goes on in the process of painting. That's why I think painting still has some validity. You had an earlier guest talking about the technological world and digital art, and that's just another world that I don't really involve myself in. There's something that happens when I see the painting. I feel like I'm in touch with either the subconscious or whatever it is. There's something that's happening in that whole event of painting. That process has not gotten weaker over time. It's gotten stronger. I mean, I'm more sophisticated in my skills, so I can get lost very easily and lose that feeling of technically just painting. But there's the mystery that happens in trying to find the painting and trying to find out what's happening. And that's the part that I like about what I do. And that's not something that I've lost yet in the form that I'm working in. But I also feel that even though the work seems to be very framed, as you look at the work itself, it goes beyond. I mean, they're rectangles, but they're not rectangles.
Let's see some more.
Yeah, they become activity. The paintings aren't form; they're really activity.
Wow, this is really bang.
Yeah, and what pulls the work out of the traditional minimalist form, which I mean, some people associate what I'm doing with minimalism and so forth, but really what pulls it out is it's an event. It's not a painting; it's an event. It's when one. I think that's the skill that I've honed, but also the sensitivity with the colors over the years, is the paintings have become more and more about environmental experience for a viewer who walks up not to a painting but to an event. The things are happening; they're not form.
First of all, these things are moving.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at them just because of the juxtaposition, and
Right.
it's a real alchemy.
Yeah. And I mean, we're dealing with perception of reality, really, and at the same time we're dealing with what makes us tick and what is really part of the world around you. You know, I think art sort of has to, or my goal of what I do with my art is it's trying to do or kick in or communicate our mutual delight, experience, awareness of what our lives are about. I'm still of that ilk that a painting or what might be called art still has some sort of religiosity about it.
It's a sacred act.
It's a sacred act, yeah.
Let's look at this.
Yeah. And they hum. And, you know, there have been movements that work with op art and so forth, and I sort of feel at times I fall into that a bit, but I think I've tried to make the more organic, more sense of softness, seductiveness in the forms and what happens. I think I've tried to use as little as I can to make the piece actually happen.
These are big, by the way. So
yeah.
you know, so these are large scale. Well, here's scale. Okay.
Yeah, right,
So
exactly.
where is this? Where's this? Where are we here?
This particular painting is
Wow.
Has been in a couple of exhibits, but now it hangs in, believe it or not, in Salinas, in a place where people exercise.
At the health center.
Yeah, yeah.
My wife said I saw Lucas's piece she went to the swimming pool there.
Yeah. So it radiates, and at first people thought it was kind of weird, but I think they sort of got the energy out of it because it really, you know, it's vibrating. It's just happening. So it's just kind of like the thing you get out of exercise.
These things really pop, and when you see them as a show,
Yeah.
and you walk into this space, you don't have to turn the electricity on because the electricity is on.
No, they work in anything.
Wow, here's another.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these are, and again, there's so much subtlety. There's a lot of, you know, you're very painterly in this. There's a lot of painterliness in this.
Yeah, there's certainly the considerations of what will work as a painter works with the palette and develops how they, especially since Impressionism and Post-Impressionism, and how do colors work together and how do you make it happen. I mean, in relatively simple construction, they seem to be relatively easy to do, but they are pretty tightly balanced. There's a lot of obsessive-compulsive problems that happen in these things.
And you know when it doesn't work.
Oh yeah. I get to see it when it doesn't work.
And you don't repeat.
I've been doing pieces where I've gone back, like for example the yellow piece that was on here early, the horizontal one. That was a revisit of a design. Yeah, that's the piece. Thank you. Of a design that I probably did 20 years ago, but in reviewing it, I realized I could do more with it, and it was just because one of the hardest things for me is I'm so minimalized in my compositions and design that it's very easy to just repeat. So I don't want to, I could spend all my time trying to come up with new designs, but that's not really what I'm talking about. What I'm really talking about is the color. So if I repeat the designs, it doesn't matter. It's what's happening in the color. You know, theoretically, at a certain point, I could
Wow.
say I do the same painting over. Yeah, I do the same painting over and over again, but just they tweak further and further and further into the whole.
And color is color is like notes, and it is an endless conversation.
Yeah.
And that's kind of hard to grasp. That's you know.
Well, the interesting thing is everybody's a piano player when I look at my paintings. You know, it's like it doesn't require the hours and days and years of practice to be able to make something happen. It's just within us ourselves. We're generating and creating these colors. Color doesn't exist anywhere except in you. I mean, as in an individual. We are creating that to try and make sense of all the stuff that's going on. And probably infants see more than we do, but our brains realize we don't need that stuff, especially all the secondary events that happen with color. Like as I look at you now, we have a green screen behind. For people who can't see that on the television, but there's a green field behind you. And as I look at you, there's an aura. Now that aura is not because I'm seeing your aura. It's because the color between your skin and your jacket,
little brown and tainted.
a little polluted.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's happening because the colors are. My mind is trying to figure out what am I seeing here, and so it overreacts on some things and then underreacts for other things. So there's all these games that our brains are playing that define our reality. And the paintings that I do kind of remind you that this is all. Nothing is static here. Everything is moving.
And like good art, what good art should do is when they leave one of your paintings, you're looking around more.
Yeah.
And you're looking at the color relationships, and you're seeing more than 4 colors.
Well, it's a little bit. It deals a little bit with the whole aspect of psychedelic work. You know, is the idea of and I hope any artwork that I'm particularly thrilled with is one that makes me walk out or walk away with a different view of the world and a different experience. And if nothing else, the sheer power of the color makes you walk out and see the world in a different color. It looks different.
So let's talk about Germany.
Yeah, I just had a show in Munich, and it's an interesting thing to start bringing the work into a new culture. Of course, the gallery thinks it's a good idea, and as yet, we'll see. I haven't been there myself. And then I'm going to be I'm going to be involved with an exhibit in Basel in the summer, and then next in Miami in December. So sort of all new marketplaces, so to speak, because I have to sell work so I can paint my work, but new audiences mainly, which is going to be interesting to see what the feedback is on all of that.
So one of the things when I was with the museum that we never got done, but I would have loved to have done, is with taking it out onto the boats, doing this thing. Kind of explain what that was, what this idea is, because maybe there's somebody out there that can fund this, because I'd still like to do this.
Well, there's a lot of movement in the art world supposedly with creating events, taking art into the real world rather than merely as a static or as something you stick on the wall. So there's a lot of conceptual art and a lot of theatricals. And one of the things that I've experienced living here, and I think we've talked about this, is that when you come into the Monterey Bay on Highway 1, heading south, and all of a sudden you see this incredible glow of green light and green glow, and you think, what the heck is that? And of course, it's the fishermen catching squid, or trying to catch squid. I guess the light attracts them. They do it at night. Excuse me, I should have prefaced that. At night. So it got me thinking. I've done some installation work where you walk into one of my paintings, theoretically. I did a piece with in conjunction with Jeff Beckham where we took over a room and we basically painted the floor, walls, ceiling. And people could walk through the colors and see the colors change, color compositions happen as they walked, or they could stop and see what happens as they were involved. So one of the ideas that I had was, once I saw those lights, I thought if we could do that on a foggy night, but change the colors using various kinds of flares and lighting, that, for example, on Carmel Beach on a foggy night, one could have a color composition happening over the ocean within the fog. There's a lot of technical things that have to be worked out in that, and timing is, of course, one of the major ones, because you have to have a foggy night to make it happen. But it could be, I think it would be a remarkable experience. I mean, we've all seen what happens with fireworks in the fog. And,
what do you think it would cost to fund this? What are we looking at?
I have no idea, but it would probably require 4 or 5 boats, with some launchers and some lighting, you know, so it's probably thousands, but I'm not sure what the numbers would be. And it would be the cooperation. You also probably have to have a cooperation of the Coast Guard and a few other things.
Well, I'm a lover of Cristo, and
right.
and I'm a lover of the community coming in to do something that makes absolutely no sense but is fabulous.
Well,
and that's what Cristo did. So I'm really putting this out there because you never know who's listening, and you never know who's.
It's true.
You know,
it's true.
I got the checkbook out, and I'm about to give it to the Boy Scouts, but I think I'll give it to Lucas Blok.
I think it'd be. I mean, I was living in Carmel in the '70s when we used to have these 4th of July celebrations. I don't know if you were in this area at that time, but it was basically a war zone between every young boy with his bottle rockets and then a few people who had stolen off some fireworks. The place was like a war zone, but the colors were great.
Yeah. So anyway, lucasblok.com.
Yeah.
Let us know, because I'd like to see this.
I should come up with, talking to the digital guy earlier, I could probably do a conceptual version of it on screen and then do it from there and go from there. But it's a real community. It would be, like you say, a Cristo thing. It's a community effort that would make that happen.
Yeah, and I'd like to be a proponent of that kind of thing, because why not?
Sure.
And then
Do it annually.
because like Cristo does is he sells the art, and that's how he makes his living. But the conceptual pieces are his sharing with the community, his community experience, and his advertising.
Well, it's also that his art is about what it takes to get that done, so everybody's a part of it. You know,
Yeah, which I think is very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the power of it, is the community.
Let's talk about as we close down real quick. We talked about the ocean thing that we were going to walk through, that colors with the plastics, with the glass.
Right. Yeah.
Explain that real quick.
That was the sort of the next step after doing an installation piece where the things were painted on walls, was to create transparent and translucent color effects, which was basically a maze of plastic sheeting, colored, whereby one could walk through it and develop compositional experiences of color in probably something of a small football field kind of thing. That's another one of those. I try to think of ways to get people to be interested in color, and by placing people in situations where they have to, it's overload, it opens them up. The paintings are separate from that, because I think when you do a 3D or an experiential thing like the boats or a maze, is you're kind of in a preset experience, but with the paintings you're actually creating it. So I'm a little in conflict with all of that, but if it opens people up, that's fine.
Well, I think it's fun. You have your one arena, which is a sacred arena, and then you have this other arena that's
like
fun
that
and
idea.
And
Right.
I want to push it, because you never know who's watching this.
Yeah.
And I want you supported. There we are, at Community Hospital.
Yeah. There's a lot of health related installation work. It seems to help people keep the power, the energy up through illness. That's the hope.
And just as a disclaimer, I own your art. I like waking up and looking at it every day. So anyway, my guest, Lucas Blok, lucasblok.com, lucasblok.com, no C, just B-L-O-K. And I'm Mark Baer. You're watching YourTown Television, and we'll be back.